Are you a little ADHD?
What do you think? Squirrel.
What is favor? What is success?
Anything Jesus is doing in our life is always toward freedom. You can almost discern prayers immediately with that line of thinking. If I'm sitting there praying like, Lord, I want all of this stuff, and he's like, okay, well, does that make you free? And I'm like, ooh, it makes me respected. And he's like, that's not what I'm asking you.
Do you ever think or consider that the things that you're feeling as desires are actually God's feelings
Absolutely.
and desires?
I think if they're not about me, I love those desires.
Yeah.
I think God's all over those desires.
But what if they are sometimes about you?
Then I think God's got to help me manage them. I have to be careful because there's just a lot of ego that I'm still trying to get rid of.
Is the ego been something that the industry created?
No, that's just
been you.
Mr. Sin, just like,
Hey everybody, this is Rita Springer. Welcome to the Rita Springer podcast and another episode of Worship is My Weapon. So excited today because I have a guest on the show today that literally saved my life in COVID. You saved my life in COVID. I think it's probably where Dave Barnes, I found out who you were and then just went down a rabbit trail.
Yeah.
Because I think COVID hit
I feel like
so
I should
fast.
apologize too, just that you had to see what you saw.
No, do not apologize. Literally, I was renting a house down the street from here and just moved July of 2019. My son just started high school, which is the worst year to start high school in a COVID year.
Yeah.
And COVID starts, and all of a sudden on my Explore page on Instagram, your toilet paper comedy reels start coming up. And literally, I got caught actually in COVID with an artist that was in town from LA. So she was just stayed with us for 2 months because she didn't go back to crazy LA. And we lived every day for you to post. Was it Snapchat you were using?
Yeah. But I was basically using those filters and then posting them on Instagram.
But it was just, I think it was like the relief every day. Because sometimes you'd post them every day.
I did every day.
I was like, this guy is bored in COVID like the rest of us.
65 days.
Yeah. And it was, I cannot begin to tell you how in such a scary time that nobody had ever been through any of that crap before. And then just this little bright light of you making a joke of so many different things that were just so genuinely funny. And it just brought joy in such a season of, didn't you feel that? Like you must have gotten people saying that all the time to you.
Yeah, it was fun seeing how much it became like a thing. Like people would, I have friends be like, hey, why didn't you post it today? And I'd be like, okay, but settle down.
Right.
It's taking longer now. There's backstories. I have to remember. It was really fun. The funniest part of that for me was, it was like, obviously it started as just kind of like, oh man, this is fun. Obviously you didn't have anything to do.
Right.
So I was like, I'll just shoot these.
Yeah, we were all
just
videos. Bored.
But then once you started, like I said, backstories, like,
yes.
I'd have to go, wait, who is his girlfriend's name? And then I'm watching old videos, writing down like, okay. And then,
oh my gosh.
And then it became like, okay. They'd be like, that's not the right one. Okay. And then like I'd come down.
How many times did it take you to do those?
First it was
especially
just go.
Mr. Nance.
You just go. Yeah, no, you just go. But by the 7th, 8th video, you're realizing like people are invested.
Oh, we were so invested.
Well, I'd come down, and so first it'd take 10 minutes. Because, towards the family, and he'd be like, my wife would be like, all right. And then like, again, I think I did 65 or 66 in a row. By like the 40th, I'm coming down like sweating. And Andy's like, what are you doing up there? I was like shooting 900 takes of these videos because I'm getting stuff wrong. And finally I was like, this is just it's taking way too much time because, like most of it is just spontaneous.
Yeah.
And then it would turn into like, I'm doing 20 takes. And I was like, this is the job.
Yeah, but you created these incredible backstories of these characters. And you still post Phil.
Phil, yeah,
Pastor Phil. But it was just such a segue from the droning every day of like terrible news and bad news. I had a friend at the time that worked for somebody that was very in the White House, and so I was hearing I was hearing it straight from the, and it just was like, oh gosh. So it was just, that's when I went down a rabbit trail. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is a really great musician.
Yeah. You found
and then I just went down this road and started listening to music and following just your story, and was just so intrigued because you really are a profound writer here in Nashville.
Yeah, thanks.
Do people know that about you? People that you've written with, obviously, but most of the time, do people know like you've written a lot more songs than you've released on your own?
Yeah.
And did you start that there? Because I did a little Wikipedia on you. But Wikipedia, South Carolina, born and raised, right?
Yeah, there till I was 6.
And you're a PK kid. So how did you, like, what church, what denomination?
PCA, Presbyterian Church in America.
Wow.
Dad and mom, he went to seminary in Jackson. At RTS, is that right? And then got his first gig as kind of like a young adults pastor in Columbia at First Pres there.
Okay.
And did that. And then I was 6 when we moved. So I'm the oldest of 3. So it was me and my sister Beth was 4 at the time that we moved. My brother Brad, who was 6 months. So we moved to Mississippi.
Okay.
From
South Carolina.
From South Carolina. The town was 8,000 people.
Wow.
Tiny, tiny town. But really healthy church, which my dad always says. He's like, it was kind of a tough 10 years just because he and my mom are both pretty extroverted.
Yeah.
And, loved Columbia because it was kind of like a big, vibrant city. Not big, but, for the South, big. And then, God calls him to this. It's funny. I think about this a lot. I don't know if this will resonate with you, but, there was a long time in ministry where you just got called. Yeah. And God would, and my mom and dad were very prayerful about these things, but there wasn't this sort of like, do I want to go there?
Right.
It was very much like, Lord, if you're opening doors, it's where you want us to go. And that's what dad and mom did in Mississippi, and an incredible place to grow up. Like it is some of my best memories.
Wow.
Just amazing small town and freedom and bikes and friends. And
wow.
It was just
and
really,
you were
really
there
great.
For how long?
10 years.
10 years.
But, for mom and dad, it was like, it was pretty rough go for just their personality types. And again, I think God really blessed them with a really healthy, vibrant church. Where dad will say he really kind of got his chops. But, like really tough, So we moved to Knoxville when I was in high school and upcoming junior. That was really got to go to a bigger city. And, it was kind of like, here we go. But it was great. I mean, I loved growing up in that.
Did you town. Because you grew up in faith, were you the kind of kid that always had music in your background? Were you playing guitar as a kid?
No. My music for me was really, really out of nowhere. I mean,
how is that possible? Because your knowledge of bands and singers and songs kind of blows my mind. Like you pay such close attention to eras of music. I love it
so much.
Did you listen to music growing up to get all that?
Yeah, but mom and dad just kind of always had music on. My dad, I mean, they both do, but dad, I'm very much like my dad. Like if I'm doing anything, I've got music on. Okay. Like it's just kind of like a safety blanket or whatever. So I grew up kind of with it around, knowing like, it's like music's a good thing. Like we listen to it a lot. And just so much of that music's just so good. So it was like, how could you not like Billy Joel or James Taylor or Motown or Steely Dan?
And your dad was listening to all that.
Oh yeah. Beatles, whatever. And so I think at an osmotic level, I sort of took on like, music's is a part of life. This is what we do. We listen to music, And it's not like we'd sit in front of the stereo.
Yeah.
But it was just always on. Dad just really loved listening to music, as did mom. So when I got to, Kosciuszko, the small town in Mississippi, it was around, but there was no way to interact with it because it's such a small town. There wasn't like a music scene. I knew one guy that had a drum set, maybe 2. But I didn't know a guy that owned a guitar of any of my friends. Like that was just like, what is that? So when we moved to Knoxville, I'd started playing drum set, and my high school was 2,500 people. So that's like, a third of the town. Right. So all of a sudden I'm meeting these guys who play electric guitar and they're listening to music I'm listening to. And so those guys would come over and jam. And I was like, what is this?
Oh, wow.
And music had really, really, so I was at a friend of mine's in Mississippi, and this is so random, but he had a Time Life CD, like the hits of, I think it was 77 or 8.
Those were pretty big back then.
They were huge. And for some reason, I think we had been swimming or something. We're just hanging out in his room, and he put on the CD and he hit play. And I remember that is for me the Ebenezer moment of like, I remember standing in front of a stereo, and all of a sudden music. This is probably like 7th, 8th grade. It was like, this is different. Something in me, like, and I just stood there like a crazy person. And like American Woman was on that, Dust in the Wind was on that, More Than a Feeling by Boss. And I just remember for whatever reason, that moment for me was like, I have to be a part of this.
Something like,
And then I started playing drums, got to Knoxville, started being in bands and stuff. And that was, that was kind of setting I knew like, I like music, I think more than most people do. But all I knew to do was play drums. So I couldn't really interact with it in any other way than just to play drums.
Yeah. How do you tell your parents that?
Well, it's
Presbyterian
funny.
pastor.
Oh yeah. So I get, my dad is kind of a rebel. That's one of the things I've always admired about him. Like he's not a kind of a rule follower guy. So he always laughs that, he chose the PCA or whatever because it was the closest to what he believed. He's not like he's not towing that line. And I kind of always loved that about him, that he's just very much like, well, why are you doing that? Why are we doing this? Anyway, so I got to college and my roommate had a guitar. I started playing guitar. And it came to me really quickly because, and I think Joe, shout out producer Joe, will agree. I think if you play drums, you can kind of play anything because rhythm makes you sound good.
Yeah.
If you can play anything in rhythm, you sound like you know what you're doing. And so I picked up guitar pretty quickly, but for whatever reason, I started writing songs. Like I didn't want to learn other people's songs. I wasn't like, oh, now I can play Dave Matthews. I was like, no, I want to I don't know why, but I just want to write songs.
So you weren't consciously thinking, I want to be a songwriter.
No. I was just writing songs. And then I got hip to the fact that in Nashville, this is my freshman year of college. Oh, there are people in Nashville that write songs for other people and they don't sing because I didn't sing. And I was like, oh, then I'm going to do that. So then my best friend, who's still my best friend, Micah has a great voice. So he'd come over and I'd play him songs I'd write and then he'd sing them. And it was like this fun thing of like, oh, that's how my song sounds. And he had a great voice. And then we started kind of writing some songs together. And there was a day where I wrote a song and I played it for him. And he was like, you sound really cool singing that. And I was like, no, I'm not a singer. I'm a drummer.
Yeah.
Because I still thought I was a drummer. And he's like, well, I'm not singing it. So if you want people to hear it, you got to sing it. He's like, you owe me for your career. You know that.
Wow.
Which is kind of true. But so I remember that to me was the second kind of shift. Because I was like, well, hold on. Because the songs I were writing were like, I don't know if you know who Skip Ewing is, but he was kind of an idol of mine back then. But just really kind of country little love ballads.
Yeah.
That was what I was writing.
Yeah.
Like, walk down songs that were like,
yeah.
Most of them were terrible. But every now and then I'd write something that people would be like, man, that's pretty good, And so when Micah said that to me, it was like suddenly like, oh, I need to think about this. Because if I'm going to sing these songs, I don't want to write those songs for me. I want to write different songs for me. Because that was kind of like, oh, these are stuff other people sing and that's fine. But that's not really what I...
Were you conscious because of your repertoire of music that you were listening to? Were you conscious of what would sell or what would be the best thing to write with somebody and then writing all your other songs on the side? Like how?
I wouldn't give me near that much credit. I think it was more, man, to be honest with you, Rita, I think I even still feel this way if I'm not careful. It's kind of like, what is the most diluted, palatable, digestible thing? That's for the masses. Something that that's interesting and complicated and a little more well-constructed, that's for me and my fans. And so I think like that was probably where I went.
That's kind of like, I mean, that's super truthful and honest, but that's the problem.
Well, do you know what I think it is? I mean, this may be the next 3 hours of this podcast if we're not careful, but I think one of the things that I feel and I felt, this will answer your question, so I'm not trying to start another conversation because it actually answers that question, but I think something that I felt really early when I was writing my artist stuff was, I think this was what I was hinging my whole thing on. The whole bet was, I think the whole point of being an artist is writing songs only you can write, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because the people I listened to, they didn't go together.
Yeah.
That's why I liked them. Is because if I want to listen to Billy Joel, this is how he sounds. Stevie Wonder,
right?
Blood, Sweat and Tears, the Beatles. It wasn't. Now they would obviously have through lines because it's music.
Yeah.
But it was like, that's an Elton John song. Oh, and that's a Dan Fogelberg song. It wasn't kind of like, I wonder who wrote this. It was like, no, you know who wrote it. And so I think for me, that's when I started to delineate this idea of like, oh, okay, so you can like write songs for other people and those need to be a little more digestible. But man, if I'm gonna write songs for me, I need to make sure they sound like me. And so then it was this job of going, well, who am I? Like, what are...
But the fact that you knew at such a young age that if you were going to do this in the business world and write songs for that would have to be digestible songs.
Yeah.
And yet the most creative time you probably have is when you write your own song.
100%.
So just to stay there for a second, why isn't it flipped?
Because I just don't think people want to work. I mean, I don't think the masses, man, what a complicated, wonderful question.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like this is all about this really beautiful creative expression of these talents and giftings that we have. Why in the world would we water them down?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think some people have the gift to do that where they don't have to. I think Paul McCartney has that gift. I think Stevie Wonder has that gift. I think some of the real icons of our world.
And what's the common denominator about those guys?
An ability to write a melody that is so unbelievably understandable. It doesn't matter the context of the rest of the song, the chords under it, how much it's changing keys, that it's just so good. Yeah. It doesn't matter that it's like, I mean, if you think about Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder, that melody is bananas. It's crazy, but it's just so good you don't care. You're like, I'll sing that all day. And so I think, you know, there's a genius that some people have where God has just given some people the ability to just write things that it doesn't matter. It's just, you just go, I want to sing that. Is
it that, or is it that some of those songs slip under the gatekeepers?
Yeah, that too. No, that's definitely the truth. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Because I sometimes wonder too, it's like, I'm over here trying to do the thing that I feel like is the most creative thing because I can't do it over here. So you even saying that, it's like, oh gosh, I think a lot of artists feel like that.
Well, and I mean, listen, when it becomes commercial, it's a whole other problem because then, you know, I think if you're off in your dorm room or you're living in some other city, like we talked about with you before we started rolling, and it's kind of this safe place where you don't have other eyes on it and there's not an industry around it. That's probably the better way to say it. You can kind of create in this vacuum, and it's amazing because there's nobody sitting with you going, hey, that chorus feels like 2 times too long, or it's taking too long to get to the chorus, or, you know, it's too high. The whole thing's just too many chords. Yeah. You're just going, you know, all we have in our bodies, every human, is our own instinct. That's all we got. That's the best and the worst of what we have is our ability to write something and go, I think that's good. That's the end of it. The rest is God's. Yeah. I mean, it's God's there too, but really it's the rest of God's after that. Because then you're just kind of going, it sort of passed all my tests. Right. And here it is, you know? And so I think when you drop that instinct in an industry, it gets really tricky because you can start going, well, like, God, even before it's passing my test, I'm adding other people's tests in here too now. Like I'm listening like my producer would listen to my publisher or the audience. Right. Or the people in the church, whatever. Right. Oh, would they like that? And it's like, no, don't do that. Like, I mean, do it. Maybe edit later, but don't let it affect the actual creation process. Hey, you guys, I just want to thank Amazing Life Foundation for making what I do here on this podcast possible. They are my rally team, my biggest supporters. Without Amazing Life, this podcast would not be coming to you. They've just got this insane team of editors. I've just had the best of the best, and I want to just give them a shout out. There's a lot of beautiful things that are coming out of Amazing Life Foundation, and I want you to stay tuned for some of those things. But I just want to shout out to them and thank them for making this podcast possible and bringing this podcast to you every Wednesday. And letting me do what I love to do. Did you have to learn all that? Because when you go into this being young, you're like, even the way that you described it, there's such a purity on the way you walked into it, not even really understanding it.
And then you realize, oh my God, this can be a business.
Yeah.
Like this can be what I do with my life, which is risky in and of itself. Yes. And you get into it and all of a sudden you're fighting all these different things and trying to find yourself as an artist. Mm-hmm. So let me take you back to calling. Yeah. Like, do you feel like anybody that's creative or feels that thing like you did, that's almost like an internal calling of the Lord kind of pushing them into something that they don't have to know everything that it's going to look like, but that get to that beautiful edge of creativity, at least figure it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Do you feel like that's what that the Lord kind of called you into it? Or did you grow up thinking, because you're talking about like in the Presbyterian world, you have a calling, you have a ministry, right? Yeah. That's how it used to be. I don't think that language is kind of the same anymore. But what did you feel like, or what age were you when you felt like I am called to this? Like, I feel like I can feel the pleasure of God when I write these songs. Yeah. I mean, they don't have to be Christian. They don't have to be, you know what I'm saying? When I'm just doing what I'm doing in creativity. You're made to do. Yeah, doing what you're made to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you have that epiphany?
I think I was just so, I think I'm such a pleasure junkie that I was kind of like, I just love doing this. I hope this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And then God continued to open doors and it felt like, oh, well, that's awesome. Maybe we're like jived up where it's like, we're synced up. We're in, like that it's like, what I love to do is what God wants me to do. And that's incredible. Cause it was like, I mean, if I told you the ways that I got, I had no pedigree to do what I'm doing right now. And an atheist, I think if I told my story would go, yeah, it kind of feels like something wanted you to do that. It's just so obvious. I was talking to Ed Cash yesterday. We wrote a couple of days ago. And, Ed is like one of my dearest friends and a big brother. And I owe so much of my career to him. But I told him, I was like, he called, I just love him so much. And we made a bunch of my early records together. Yeah. And he just called. We do these every now and then where he was just like, dude, I just want to call and tell you I love you. Like, what a fun day. And we're just like, and I said, dude, sit in the room writing with you. I had this moment where I realized I was so unbelievably unqualified to work with you and to benefit from your skill set. Yeah. And so much of my early career is because he was so good that he could take what I was doing and make it sound really, really good. Yeah. And
you probably learned a lot from him in the process.
I still am. And so I think, that's just one of a billion things that I think God was just like, man, we're going to make this work and this is how this is going to go. And I was just, I was on this still am on this wonderful roller coaster ride of like, I'm not driving this thing. Yeah. Now success makes you think, oh, I am driving this thing. And then that's where everything gets really tricky. But I think those early days of where you're like, man, it just feels like doors just keep opening and, it's just like, this is so fun. And, it's crazy,
But that's even the way you're saying that is kind of a rare thing to hear from me, because I'm so used to hearing people talk about, I felt driven for this. I felt completely called to this. I went after this and went after this. You're saying it almost like your personality and your character. There's not, it was fun. So I went and did it, which actually eliminates a lot of the pressure that sometimes we go into a calling or we go into a vocation or even whatever we feel like we're doing in the creative.
Well, I think one of the gifts, and this is a weird way to say this, but one of the gifts that God gave me in the way that it unveiled is there was no way that I could have thought I was good at this because I wasn't.
Wow.
I had never done it, so there was no history of success. So for me, it was like everything was just found gold. I was like, more people want to hear the music. Are you kidding? This is all. It wasn't. I think if I'd grown up singing, playing guitar, being in bands,
that's what I'm saying.
All right, this is what I'm supposed to do.
You wouldn't have this.
No. So for me, it was like I had so little expectations early on because I was like, they're still letting me hang out. Dude, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm in this room with all these people where it's like, I shouldn't be in here. Like I was a drummer.
Yeah, but that's a really beautiful level of humility.
Well, I mean, that's kind of to say that they did that. But I think I wasn't that, I mean, that's not fair. Ed actually admonished me yesterday because I was going on and he's like, stop. He's like, obviously God gave you immense talent. And I was like, okay, whatever. But I do think for me early on.
Is that hard for you to believe about yourself? That you actually have an incredible gift?
No, I think now not as much. I think early on I was like, man, I hope this is true because it'd be awesome.
Where is that? Where did that come from? Where's that level of insecurity come from?
I just didn't do it. I mean, well, you'll get this. This is what we talked about first, our conversation before we started recording. So, I'd played drums. I was very confident on drums. But when I started, like I had never sung before I did my first concert.
Yeah.
I literally booked a concert and I'd never sung in front of people really. So, I mean, it was something in my brain was like, hey, this is what you got to do. So I went and did it. It was just like, hey, if you want to do that, that's the bridge. Like start playing shows.
Yeah.
And so I think I didn't really know how to sing. I sang very garble mouthed. If you listen to my first couple records, Ed had to like wear me out in the studio. He's like, open your mouth.
Right.
And so I think knowing this about myself, I was like, there's some cool, like, I mean, gosh, don't you remember those days? How great, Ed and I were reminiscing about this yesterday. How great were the days where like you wrote those first couple songs and played it for people and they were like, you wrote that? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, for real?
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And they're like, Rita, that's like really
or
good.
The room would go silent.
And you're like, well, that's a weird thing to see.
Yeah.
Like that, that moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus.
Few and far between.
You're just like, because you're kind of like, is what I'm thinking about myself maybe true? Because it'd be really interesting if it was, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I had enough of those moments playing some of my early songs for people that I was like, man, maybe these are good, And then Ed and these people coming in going, oh no, they're good. And you're like, oh, well, shoot. Okay. Well, excuse me. Okay, like should probably dress up a little more. But I think just because, and this is what I was going to say, moving to Nashville, I mean, some of the first people I ever met were the Cates brothers, Jess and Chad.
Wow, yeah.
And then two brothers named Ricky and Randy Jackson, who are just phenom singers. And they're both super attractive. And they got signed by David Foster when they were like 19. Both, the twins.
Yeah.
And Matt Wirtz, these guys, so I'm like, these are my peers, but also competition. I'm like, this is different. This is like major leagues and I should barely be on a minor league team, but not because of skill set, but experience. It was like, I'm new to this and these guys are singing circles around me, So I think for me, it wasn't a false humility. It was just a very appropriate realization of where I stood in the pecking order of things. Now I was extremely motivated. I mean, I was super excited. I was very tenacious, but also like, like the Jackson brothers, especially, like those guys, if you heard, and they both sing like this still, but like, we'd sit in a room and we'd trade songs and they'd sing. And I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. Yeah. Now, I can do what I'm doing, but still this is a new muscle for me. So there wasn't this sort of like, oh, shit. It was like, no. I'm reading the room real quick and realizing like I need a lot more batting practice.
Yeah, but some of the stuff that you're saying too seems like such almost an internal healthy perspective that you're having, not just about yourself, even though I think part of that is a safety mechanism that we don't fully believe that we have what it takes just to keep us a little safe in case we really do suck. Yeah. But there's not a breeding of competition with that healthy kind of mindset, which is very rare in the music business.
Well, you know what I think it is too? I always tell people when you move to Nashville, a couple things happen. You probably get intimidated and hopefully you get inspired. But if you only get intimidated, it's the wrong thing for you.
Yeah.
That intimidation has to turn into inspiration. And I think for me, that was always the case. I'd hear somebody play a song and it'd be like,
you'd be inspired.
I want to hit you in the face. I'm mad at you because that's so good. Wow, all right, I got to get home. Let's see if that will turn. Well,
so that drove you to actually be better at what you were doing.
Yeah, it was like constantly. And I mean, there's nothing. And I think too, I just love music so much. Like sit in the room and listen to whoever my friends were play a song. Like my buddy Matt Wirtz, when he played this song Red Meets Blue for me the first time, I was like, okay, hold on. Play that again. It was like, when did you write that? He's like, a month ago at Young Life Camp. I was like, dude, that's one of the greatest songs I've ever heard. Yeah. It was like, so I'm just like, thank you. That's amazing. It's like, I love music, so I'm loving this moment. Yeah. So I think that helped it too, I just love music so much. I was like, that was awesome to hear this amazing song my buddy just wrote. But then also going like, okay, the bar just got moved. Yeah. Now I got to go home.
Was that exciting to you when the bar gets moved?
I mean, it was just like crap.
So that's where your drive is to push yourself to be better.
Yeah.
Not in competition or
no,
comparison.
But just like, I want to be in the league with these people.
I
just want to be considered one of them.
Okay, so when you start writing songs and then your songs, like you've written with a lot of like pretty big names, and you've seen some songs go on the charts, and you have been nominated for a Grammy Award. When those things happen, there's always a shift, right? There's a shift.
The shift.
And so the purity that you come from and the joy that you have, the health that you're kind of in, you've got this kind of balance with your own pursuit of bettering yourself. And then all of a sudden you have success. So how do you balance out the success that doesn't say you need to beat that?
I don't know.
You need to beat that.
You need to tell me that. Tell me, wise one. I think that to me is I have a million thoughts about this. I think, first of all, I said this to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I've thought about it a lot. But success scales, and I think that's something we get wrong first. Is that we think like once you have it, you're fine. But Ecclesiastes has told us that. But now you've just begun that whole thing.
Right.
Like, well, then just 2 number ones, and it's 3 would probably be good for that's Trinity. 3 is a great number. We'll be good there. And then 4, and you're like, well, now we need to get to 7 because that's the next holy number. And then it's 77. But that was, man, I still think, 13 years after God Gave Me You, Blake taking that song, Yeah,
because did you write it with him?
No, I released it myself. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And it did really well at CCM.
And how did Blake Shelton hear that song?
On Christian radio.
Whoa.
How about that?
Give it up for some Christian radio.
I don't want you to know. I'm still mad at Caleb, though, because I didn't put it in heavy.
Wow.
But
and then did he come to you and say, I want to do
No, I had a mutual friend at Warner where he is or was. And she just said, hey, this is crazy, but Blake heard the song on the radio, and this is when he and Miranda were dating. And I think that he may put it in the wedding. And I was like, oh, that's a cool little story. Great,
Yeah.
And then okay, I have to tell you this story because it doesn't make sense. I'll try to tell this quickly, but this is one of my favorite God stories. So I was in a season of my career. I'd been with Razor and Tie in New York for a couple of records. And I was just kind of like, Annie laughs at me. I do this a lot in my career. About every 4 or 5 years, I'm like, this is so hard. And nobody likes me. I'm trying so hard.
That's so normal, yeah.
And we were on a walk, and I was just like, lamenting all of this stuff to Annie, and
poor Annie.
And I don't know if she told me to pray about it. Oh, this is my whole marriage. That's going to name her autobiography. Poor me, the story of my marriage. But I just started praying for encouragement. I thought I really felt like the Lord put on my heart, just pray that word. You don't even need to pray like details. Just pray for encouragement. So long story short, I write God Gave Me You. I sent it to Ed. We had finished a record. But I sent it to him, and he's like, we're recording this tomorrow. And I was like, oh, so I guess you like it. I mean, it was hysterical because I was like, I don't know if it's good. He's like, I've got the band in coming tomorrow at 10. I was like, oh shoot. Okay. So get there. We cut it. It's great. But we cut it like we play it live, kind of like, big old rock song.
Yeah.
And I was on the road this year. Like 2009 was the busiest year I ever had. And so I think it was that year that we cut that record. And so he calls me and he's like, hey, because he knows me so well, he's like, I messed with the song some. It's going to be a little poppier than we recorded it, but I think could be a really big song for you. And I was like, okay. He's like, but don't call me after your first listen. Listen like 5 times, then call me. And because he knew, because it's exactly my version is exactly what he sent me. It starts this pop, and I was like, listen, it's like, nope.
Right.
You ruined it. This is supposed to be, But at the 3rd or 4th listen, I'm like, okay, but I call him like, he's like, no, I'm not changing it. So then my manager calls me to say, Chris Hauser, heard God Gave Me You. I sent it to him. He thinks it's a Christian hit. And I was like, I'm not doing Christian music. That's not what I'm doing. Then the Lord. Wow. The Lord goes, he goes, Dave, you can't pray for encouragement and then qualify it. That is not how this works. And so I went,
pray for encouragement and then qualify.
That's right. You don't get to sort of, It's like, if you pray for encouragement, brother, I'm going to give you encouragement, but you got to take it as it is.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I felt that clear as a bell. And so I was like, all right, Jesus, like, let's go to Christian music. And it was the biggest blessing.
Wow.
I'd never done it. I would go to these radio stations. People were so excited because they knew my music. They had listened for years. And they were like, oh, we can't believe you're finally doing a Christian song. It is a huge hit. I have so much fun. I'm in, radio station. We're doing live. It was just so much. It suited every part of my personality.
Yeah.
And I think too, I'd been doing music for about a decade and, in the mainstream space, whatever. And it's great, but it's just like, there's just not a lot of joy and gratitude.
Yeah.
And I was walking into this just like surprise party for me every day where it was like, we can't believe you. We got all these things we want to do with you on the drive. And I was like, great. It was like doing characters and having fun and taking live calls. I was just like, this is made for me, And so at the end of it, I actually got up at the Christian music down in Disney World, whatever, because it, had been one of the most fun songs that year. And I just told the whole room full of radio prayers, and I got so emotional. I was like, listen, you guys were an answer to prayer. Like, you have encouraged me. I feel so buoyed by this experience, right? So I thought, like, God, you answered the prayer. And he's like, buckle up. Because it was like, we ain't even halfway there, son. I don't know if God sounds like a trucker, but I like it that he's a trucker. But so then Blake hears it, and then it becomes monstrous. Country, And that's where it was like, okay, God, like, wow. But that's how he heard it, was the fact. And it's funny that I was like, I'm not taking a Christian radio. And God's like, see, I have some plans, and that's going to have to happen for me to answer this prayer for you, And so then Blake hears it through Christian radio, which I didn't want to do, becomes this monster hit, gets nominated for every award and loses every single one of them. And then to your point about success, it really started. I told a guy in an interview that time, and I was like, that's the best way I can think to say that. He said, what is it like having a song? Because I wrote it by myself. He's like, so there's no, like, I can't fluff it off. And it's like, well, it was a co-write.
Yeah,
I was like, this is pretty much this is your thing, He was like, what is it like having that kind of success? And I was like, I think for me, I didn't ever expect this. And so it's really confirming, because it feels like, oh, this thing I guess I do have it, or whatever, right? But second of all, it's like really cumbersome, because all of a sudden it's like, what does that mean? This is what I have to do all the time? And now, and then you make the money from it, and all of a sudden that's a whole new thing. And you're like, well, gosh, what is my responsibility with that?
Yeah.
And so it really, and I mean, even now, I think 13 years later, I'm still kind of trying to get out from under a little bit of it. Not just that song, but other hits and whatever. Where it's
because
like,
you also talk about the bar, because those successes set a bar for you, and that was so innocently
oh my gosh,
brought into it, but now all of a sudden you're swimming in it.
Oh yeah,
and it's like, now I have to.
Well, and there's a target.
Yeah.
Before it's just a landscape of beauty, and all of a sudden this little thing pops up, and you're like, oh, there it is. Is that so? Do I shoot for that every day? Because usually I'm just shooting out into the open, we're having a blast and seeing what happens. Right. But now it's like, oh, that's it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And then, other people, you sign a pub deal and they're kind of like, hey,
right,
let's go again. And you're like, well, that's not exactly how that came about.
Right.
I was just like writing something I thought was
how
cool.
do you deal with that? How do you keep the authenticity even while you're struggling with the requirements? That some of that does.
It's really jarring. I think the artist part of it is jarring, because it's like, this is what I think a lot of artists need to understand, and even songwriters, but I'd say especially songwriting artists. The temptation is to always recreate the thing that you see resonate the most. But the minute you do that, it dilutes the original thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's always the thing you have to hold. It's kind of like, because, we all as artists have songs, people go, hey, these 5, 10, 15 songs. Right. So if you're not careful on a certain day, you're like, well, I mean, just kind of see what happens if I mess with that sort of world again. And it's like, yeah, but then people know, like, oh, you're kind of doing that thing again. And then it dilutes the very first thing that was actually the great thing.
Right.
And so I think it's just, I mean, all of life is a faith, but man, is faith. But gosh, creativity is such a weird part of faith where it's like, because, you're generating these things, hopefully with God's help, but you just have to really trust the way God make you to put out what he puts out. And sometimes it's going to be all over the place. And you just go, all right, Lord, look, that's how you made me. And sure, some of these really rung a bell, but that isn't, I want to write this other song too. It's really weird and has a bunch of key changes. Like, that's okay. It doesn't need to live under the shade of that other thing. It's just, these are all my creations. It's freeing, I think, for people to hear that, because so many artists are trapped under, well, this is what you need to do. I do a lot of mentoring on Monday and Tuesday. One of the
she's just a really powerful young singer. And she was showing me some of her work, but she was like, I don't know. I think they've got me under this, but I want to do this and I want to do this. And I'm like, if you go to a label and you say that, the label's never going to touch you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to figure out, if you want a label, you're going to have to figure what lane you want to kind of go down. Yeah. And then when you get established, you can do the Post Malone thing and go from rap to country. But I'm like, I don't know that the language that you're talking is what a label's going to look at and be like, oh, great. You want to be pop and rap and and that. And then you want to be Christian. Oh, great. We'll sign you in a heartbeat, which is kind of tragic to me because she's so incredibly creative. So many artists are like that. And that's when you say you write this song and it goes Christian, how did you get out of that stream and not be pegged for that stream for the rest of your life?
It's funny. So that song did well. And then as you can imagine, the trick of being on a label is they're like, well, hey, and I mean, it's a mainstream label. It's an indie label out of New York, but they're like, hey, we should probably do that again. And I'm like, oh, guys, I don't know, man. So I had this song on the next record.
It's all based on the success of the song.
And it didn't do anything. Like we did Christian again, and it was kind of, it sort of lived in that world a little bit, but it didn't do real well. And I think that was kind of a gift because I was so adamant with Raging Child. I was like, look, that is a one-off for me. And they're like, well, it's not because it had a ton of success. We're going to go back. And I was like, all right, but like, I'm not suddenly, that's not, I'm an elder at my church. Like I love the Lord. I love church. Like it is a huge part of our life. But that's not, I know that's not where God made me to make music. Now I can do it.
Yeah.
But that's just not what's natural to me. It's not whatever. So I just had to tell them like, hey, like this is not, and they didn't want me to be a Christian artist. That was not the point. But they're like, hey, let's just kind of keep dipping our toe in.
Because it was successful.
Yeah, and then I was like, but guys, that's cement. That's not water.
Yeah.
And if you stay in it long enough, it grabs you. And that's not anybody's fault because it works. I mean, it's like Christian industry would have just as much a right to go like, hey, keep giving us songs. Right. Everybody loves it. Right. Like it's nobody's fault.
Right.
But I think it's just like, and so I think in a weird way, it was kind of a grace that second song didn't work as well because it was kind of like, okay, that was kind of a one-off and that's fine. And then I went back to doing what I do. And so it wasn't even really a problem I had to figure out because it sort of figured itself out, and I was playing, colleges and bars and theaters. So there was no misconstrue, nobody was misconstruing like, well, no, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. He's doing his thing. That's great.
But don't you think it helped that you were with a mainstream label anyway?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because that's a little different story if you start off in that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I want to just take a little segue here and tell everybody and get the word out about the new community and tribe that I am in the middle of right now on ritaspringer.com. If you want more content, I've had a lot of people ask me for when are you going to do this and when are you going to do that and when are you going to do this? Well, I have created a platform on my website under the tab community where you will be then taken to tribes. And I am inviting you to be part of my tribe. On that, there is a subscription tier that you can subscribe to where you can get different content. We are doing Bible studies and daily devotionals and throwing some cooking shows in there on my favorite recipes and doing mentorships and songwriting things that we're going to be uploading this year. So if you want to be part of my tribe, part of my community, please go to ritaspringer.com, click on that community tab and join my community. Okay, so you have that success, you go back, and then how do you calibrate that? Okay, I've got to take this further than the other one. How do you get rid of that thing that gets on you, that is part of the hustle, that is not bad? It's not bad. Like I don't want to talk about the hustle if it's bad because I think there's hustle in everything you do. But the thing that creates every 2 to 3 years having the walk with your wife saying, nobody, I suck. I'm not enough. Because we all as artists, I mean, I talk to artists all the time about that. It's like, oh, you're releasing a record? Get ready.
Oh, God.
You're going to hate yourself in 6 months.
I mean, one of my dear friends who's a manager says his least favorite day every week is Friday.
Oh,
because all those artists are underwhelmed and mad and they didn't get playlisting and whatever. So I'll jokingly text him every now and then and be like, thinking about you. And he's like, worst day ever. I'm like, I get it. I've been releasing a song a month this year, and every time I release it, it's the saddest days of my month.
Oh gosh,
because it never achieves what you want it to.
Like that. Yeah. But it is, and I think it's what the industry kind of creates.
Oh.
But it's what we allow it to do.
Yeah.
To the thing that we already know from a lot of us, God said about us.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, and I remember doing a panel with a writer and a producer, and he's young on the scene, and he was kind of a schmoozer, but sweet, sweet kid. And somebody asked him, like, how did you get your first success? And I'm sitting there like older than the hills. And I'm like, I wish somebody would ask me that, because I've never felt like I've ever had a first success. And he's like, I was a worship leader. I stopped worship leading. I went into music full time. And I just was praying one day and I said, hey, God, I need a song that's going to feed my family.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, you can ask God?
Yeah, you're like, give me 1 second. Can we all pray for me that exact prayer? Hands on.
I mean, because in the era that I grew up in the church, you didn't ask God for that stuff.
Yeah.
You just took what God gave. That's
right.
You,
it's so true.
What I'm saying? So there's an element to the creative thing in me that's now, even in my 50s, I'm like, man, I'm going for gold. Mm-hmm. Like I'm going to ask for the moon, and if I get the hills, great.
Yeah.
But I think that God's like, yeah, you should have been asking for the moon all those years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that the path that I took is here, but there's still that wrestle in the tension, and that I'm always learning from that tension of, okay, what is favor? What is success in this industry? And is it what they say, or is it how you feel?
I'll tell you this. I've been through an interesting season where God's been kind of like scraping the barnacles off the old barn ship, which is very painful, by the way. It's wonderful, but it really hurts. And I think one of the things that I've realized is like anything Jesus is doing in our life is always toward freedom, whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh,
always,
gosh, yeah.
Always. And so I think like you can almost discern prayers immediately with that line of thinking that God's not going to answer them, And so I think if I'm sitting there praying like, Lord, I want all of this stuff, and he's like, okay, well, does that make you free? And I'm like, ooh, it makes me respected. And he's like, that's not what I'm asking you.
Right.
Is it making you free? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, why would I do that to you? I'm not trying to, my burden is light. It's easy.
Right.
And so I think for me, that's been a really delineating thought in my last like 9 months. It's like, even in my prayer life, going like, God, I can already see now with a little bit of wisdom you've given me lately. It's like, yeah, that's not going to make me free. That's going to make me burdened.
Yeah.
And I think like, and it's not to say that success always does that, but it does a lot. I think it takes incredibly mature and wise, and you only get wisdom from pain.
Yeah.
And steadfastness, right?
Yeah.
James 1 tells us that. So I think for me, I do see people that handle it well, but it's because they went through it. Yeah. And God went, now you're free, and I can give this stuff to you because you don't care. It's what we're laughing about. Like to be free, and like your ego's not a part of it. You've died all those deaths that suck. Yeah. That really suck. Yeah. I mean, they are deaths. It's death because it hurts and it's painful, but they're really freeing. And so I think there are people I know that can have those kind of things because they're like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just great. Who cares? It's fun. Another whatever. Great. I'm just glad to get to do this. That is not how I was for a long time because it was so wrapped up in my worth or trying to prove myself, whatever. And so I think for me, it's like trying to have that. And I think I'm maybe getting to be mature enough now where I'm like, Lord, I actually don't want stuff that's going to weigh me down. So if that means like I got to shed some stuff and success because it's going to kill me, then I'd rather not be dead. Yeah. So can you just give me what I know I can handle? Yeah. And then let's just do that. And I think it takes a real reframing of our minds to trust that like the way God made me to produce what I naturally produce with his co-authorship is exactly what his plan is for my life. Yeah. And not sort of getting so envious about what other people's achievements are or the things they create. But it's a really ruthless trust. It's just like, it's one of the greatest journeys I think we each have is to really get to the middle of ourselves and trust that that's exactly who God made us to be. Yeah. Because it means that you're not a lot of other things. Yeah. It just means like, yeah, you're never going to do that. I'm never going to be Paul McCartney. Yeah. God, for whatever reason, gave him that skill. And God's ultimate plan that I don't understand. So that's sad. Yeah. I want to write songs like that. Right. God's like, yeah, like you're not going to write yesterday, but look what you've done.
Yeah.
That's and Dave, the way I made you, you can actually handle what I gave you.
Yeah.
You couldn't handle his life.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a lot of wisdom discerning these things that I think only, I hate to say this, pain gives you.
Does that knowing those things and having walked through those things, does that create a hesitation in the way that you dream?
Oh my God, extremely. I really struggle with that.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm like, I've never been a big let's write dreams down. That's a conflicted thing for me theologically, because I'm like, I think you'd have to, I don't know. I have a real, it's funny you brought that up. I don't talk about this much, but like, I just don't trust myself enough to do that. Because I'm like, well, yeah, if we're going to talk about dreams, like I want to write the next, songs in the key of life. Like, but I'm like, is that what God's dream for me is? Or is that Dave's dream? And now I think it's different to go, hey, God, let me tell you what I'm thinking. Help me to know if that's not it. And help me to deal with it if it's not. That's a different posture. But I think like your vision board and these things, I'm like, I don't know, man.
But do you ever think or consider that the things that you're feeling as desires are actually God's feelings and desires?
I think if they're not about me, I love those desires. Yeah. I think God's all over those desires.
But what if they are sometimes about you?
Then I think God's got to help me manage them, because that could get tricky, because if it's about me getting another number one, like, I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. It's like,
do you trust God or do you trust yourself?
I don't trust me. I'll tell you that much. And so I have to go, hey, Lord, like, I'll tell you what my heart wants right now. I want these things.
Yeah.
Help me know what of those is great. Give me what I know I need and I can deal with. And then I trust you with the rest. And I think, I don't know. I have a very healthy, respectful view of sin. And I just think it's a sneaky little bugger. Yeah. And I think, especially in Christendom, because we can attach a lot of like holy things to it that aren't holy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I'm like, hey, if your dream is not about you and helping other people, I'm in. But if it's got a little bit of me in there that's kind of like positioning, or man, it'd make me feel a lot better. And I'm not even saying that's bad necessarily, but I mean, think about your kids.
Yeah.
If my kid came to me and said, Dad, I have this dream. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, I want to start a thing where all the money we give to, Shower Up, a local thing that we do a lot of stuff with. I'd be like, brother, sign me up.
Right.
But if he's like, hey, this dream where like, I want to make t-shirts with my face on it. And it's got my website in the back. And then maybe we're selling those for Shower Up. I'm like, okay, now I'm getting a little conflicted on what the dream is here, And so, and again, because my point, like God's point with me is I want my kids to be free. And that's not going to free my kids.
I think I'm even going so far to say the things that God entrusts to us and that God trusts us with. Mm-hmm. Like I want to be one that God would turn around and say, no, I trust you with that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's going to take, it's going to take me to get it done. It's going to take my precision and my willingness and my obedience and my giftedness and creativity to get it done. Yeah. And there's a trust that God's like, no, I trust you with it.
Yeah.
I trust you with that.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you carry God's trust?
One of the most emotional I've ever gotten is after God Gave Me You happened and I got my first check. I sat with some friends at dinner one night and I got so emotional because like I just feel like God trusts us with His money.
Wow.
And I was like, it's a really overwhelming feeling to think that God was like, hey, I've seen how you handle money and I think you can handle this.
Yeah.
And that was really overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
And so I do think, and again, I'm not trying to poo-poo on dreams and those things at all. I just think like, especially as believers, it can just get a little hairy because then what happens is if it doesn't work, then is that God's fault?
Yeah.
And now are you mad at God and deconstructing because you had a dream that God was like, that's not my dream for you. So whose fault is that?
Yeah.
So I think that stuff gets really murky.
I think it's why I'm always using the word balance.
Yeah.
Because with everything that I feel like is in me, all the dreams, all the stuff, there has to be a level of balance when those things are coming out on the table. It's kind of like that. I always think about when my son was a baby, I really felt like the Lord said, hey, don't ever ask me what he's going to become. Because especially here in the South, parents will just ask the Lord or tell their kids, the Lord told me you're going to do this.
Right.
And I felt like the Lord said, don't ever ask me, because I don't want you to muck it up for him.
Yeah.
Because you'll think you hear me say something and then without really, because you hear through this filter, you're going to say something that then he's going to hear through that filter.
Yeah.
And then he's going to grow up wanting to please you and what you heard from the Lord.
Yeah.
And I thought about that and thought about all the things that are similar to that. Like, what am I going to become? Is this going to be successful? Is this going to be hearing God kind of in part and trusting certain things, but then having the balance to say, you know what? I think the Lord was shifting me in this direction.
Yeah.
I'm not quite exactly sure what he was saying, but I'm going to lean into this direction. And if the door's open, then I just will know that there's confirmation from the Lord. That's kind of more the balance, I think, in dreaming.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like the Lord's telling me to do this and believe for something really big and really big, but I don't really know what that is, but I'm going to lean into that and say yes to it. And if it implodes, then there is some of that, like, what in the world?
I know. God, what are you doing?
But for the most part now in maturity, there's like, okay, that's not what you were saying. So let me go back to the drawing board and figure out what, but I don't think a lot of people have that ability to, especially in this industry, to have that kind of balance when Christ is involved, because it's like, they'll go for it. And if it doesn't happen, there's massive disappointment in this industry. And then it's usually pointing the finger back at how bad you are at it.
Yeah.
Or how you're not enough, or all those things. And we all struggle with that. I think that's the disease that this.
Well, it's like, to me, the place that I try to live in is if I think of like kingdom vision, right?
Yeah.
Like if I could put on my 3D glasses and like see God, which I can't, but like God sees it. I think what I would see is that, when you sit down to write your next song and you really love it and you feel great, the guy goes, thank you. You're done.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing and you feel joyful. And he's like,
Yeah.
isn't this beautiful? Like, you feel my pleasure in you doing the thing I made you to do. Now stop. That's it. You're done.
Yeah.
Don't go do your next thing. Don't do now my calling is only as validated as how effective it is. God's like, you got the wrong glasses on. I really believe that when we get to heaven, and I mean, I'm making this up and it's kind of a joke, but like the way God will see those things is that he'll go, yeah, you got so concerned with everything after what you did.
Yeah.
I cared about what you did. I cared about those moments that you created a thing and you felt that crazy thing.
Yeah.
And then you had done your job at that point. If the song the fans didn't like it or it didn't get as high on it, whatever, like he's like, that's none of your business.
Yeah.
Your business is doing it. And so I think for me, I have to remember that it's like, and so what it does, and this is always a good thing, is it makes me so present then.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, enjoy this because this is the gift, not how well it does.
Yeah.
Making it is a gift.
Do you pull away from looking at stats?
I mean, I wish I could be better at it, but I mean, I do okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm a little less attached to it than probably some of my friends are, but I think the struggle with me being the age I am at 46, if I'm not careful, because I have this narrative that's creeping up in me that's like, nobody cares. It's all over. The best is behind you. So I think as much as ever, I'm probably more.
But that's so real. That's so real that everybody struggles with that.
Well, you know what I tell a lot of people, and this is a little encouragement. I look in the camera for those of you guys and girls who are artists or whatever. I feel like I laugh with some friends. I'm like, if Nashville would give me a bullhorn and tell the whole creative industry one thing, this might be the thing. What we do is based on novelty. Oof. Music is a novel business. Now, what that means is the new thing is always the best thing. Yeah. That's okay. There's no judgment when I say that.
Yep.
There's nothing cooler. Watching that Bob Dylan movie, I was like, how cool is it when he sits and plays those songs for the first time for people? Nothing in the world, in my opinion, is more magical in a non-believing world than that magic. They're like, play that again. Nudging, dude, did you write that energy when I sit with someone and they do that, I'm like, but what makes it amazing is because it's new. Now, Bob Dylan 20 years from then plays songs, people are like, that's great, man. Bob, it's awesome. And he's like, this is my best song. They're like, yeah, maybe, but can you play A Hard Rain's Gonna Come Again? He's like, that's not as good as this song. And they're like, yeah, I mean, technically that song's better, but we loved it because novelty. And I think too, the other thing that we deal with as artists, especially, is memories. I think amplify music so much. When the best thing you can ever have is a song that's attached to a memory.
Wow, yeah,
that's the magic. And so I think when you're taking in music, your life is really robust for that experience until about 35, probably.
Yeah.
And then, it gets really wonderfully sedentary. You're taking kids to school, you're going to your job, you're doing, so that all of a sudden, the Velcro starts to wear because there's just not like, what is some magic moment now those are magic moments, but nowhere near like that discovery of music to kind of like getting married, having your first kid.
Yeah.
You're going on trips and fun and seeing these things. You've never been to Colorado and the song is on. And now every time you hear that song, you're like, oh God, do you remember when we passed over Kansas and the song was playing in that now and life gets hard. So you're going to revisit happiness. Happiness isn't new songs. And it's the songs it's familiar.
Yeah.
And so I think all of us in the music industry, this is just my take, are fighting an uphill battle after about your fourth or fifth record. Because that's really about as long as it should go on paper. Because that's when people are kind of like, hey, I know you really well and I love it, but I'm just kind of used to what you do. I'm literally used to the tone of your voice. It's very familiar to me. Yeah. So that's not novel anymore. I kind of know how you write songs. So that's not as novel. And so thank you. And you're kind of like, well, no, I got all, and they're like, no, that's great. But this is where I want to live.
Do you think that's a lost language and new artistry and new artists that they don't write with memory?
Mean? What now?
They don't write with attached to a memory, that they're just writing what they hear without it being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I think that's a whole other thing. I mean, I think that can be the trick of not, what am I trying to say? Help artists understand that they are their own.
Yeah. Because when you say that, it's like, it's quite magical the way songs are written because of that. Like
absolutely.
It makes the Rolodex of all of these songs and the memories that are attached to them, which I think that happens genuinely.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But I don't know that it's thought about.
Well, it's like this. I think so for me in the season I'm in, it's just been, candidly, it's just been tough because it's like shows haven't been quite as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
And, my demo's like all busy, which is great. I'm busy. Like they all are doing what I'm doing. But there's a very real feeling on my darkest days of like, oh yeah, like it's over. Like nobody cares. And I'm just kind of toiling away. The irony and the humor is I don't think I've ever been better at it. Right. I've done it so long. I know what I'm doing now. Yeah. And so you sort of make these products and like, hey, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's so real though.
But I think, my hope is that once everybody's life calms down, they kind of come back, which I do think there's proof for. But I think what I encourage artists with is like, a wide receiver on an NFL team knows that's how long I got. My body can only do it that long. And it's not, the analogy breaks down, but I do a lot of time when I'm trying to encourage myself and my friends, it's like, hey, we're wide receivers. Like, and those of us who get to do it a long time, we're really lucky. But I think to have expectations that this is like any other job where you go from strength to strength and it's just moving and you're the CEO and then you own the company, and then you sell. It's like, that's not how music works. It's like, you tend to have pretty explosive beginnings. And then you're doing everything you can to kind of keep it that high. But
is that though, Dave? Is that because?
And that sounds really sad. And everybody can be like, oh, what about this band or artist? And sure. But I just think there is a point where everything starts to decline.
Well, there's a level of success that you could have that you could still fill a stadium today because of that level of success.
But it's not on new things.
It's on
that first, 4 or 5 records mostly. Now, people could bring up like Stapleton, but I think I would start Chris's career when the CMAs happened, when he played with Justin. So yes, he had records, but the world didn't know about him yet. Right. Once the world knew about him, that to me was like, he would have been 21.
But do you think that is more or less a thing that the industry puts out there? No, it isn't something that God's like, you're
natural.
Over, Dave.
No, I think it is a natural experience of music. That's why I don't have like judgment on it, because I do that. Like some of my favorite artists and bands, I noticed they're about 5th, 6th record. I'm kind of like, I really like this, and every now and then somebody has something like, oh, that's. But usually it's because it's really different.
Right.
Because otherwise I kind of know it. I know what I'm getting. I'm excited about it. But
Yeah.
I just think it's our industry and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I say it to encourage people again, like the season I'm in where I'm like, why does it feel like everybody's like, yeah, it's good. When I'm like, I think some of this stuff is like miraculous. People are like, well, no, it's good. And I'm like, why is it not? But I think some of it is
interesting.
It's really natural. It's really natural. And I think for people to go, Dave, we love you. Or, name your artist. But man, we've had a lot of your music and we love it all. And you're like, yeah, but what about the stuff? And they're like, yeah, it's good. But again, we're in a wonderful way. We're used to you in wonderful ways. So I think where we can go wrong is artists feeling like, buckle up. And you hit play that people are going to be like, what? I've never heard this. But instead they're like, yeah, it's another unbelievably high quality thing you've made. And that's what we expect of you. And you're like, but shouldn't you be freaking out? And they're like, well, Dave, we did freak out when we heard you the first time. And it's just less freaking out now because we know you're good at what you do. And we're kind of.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it like that, which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm not a man.
Yeah.
And so you think there's an expiration date for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, the expiration date for women is way before ever for a man. And so in the industry of Christian music, it's like, you're done.
Yeah.
Like you're done at a certain, and I just felt so challenged by God about that.
Yeah.
And I felt very strongly that, when I was younger, I felt like the Lord said, greater are the things you'll do in the latter part of your life than ever the former. And when you're young and you hear that, you're like, what's about to happen? Like, what's not going to happen?
Yeah.
But I've had to actually pull in a mentality that what I'm doing now is really so innovative and so different than anything that I've ever done. And I've actually think I pulled it off in a different way because I've had people say, we've never heard you like this.
Well, that's the thing.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. So I do think it's possible.
Absolutely.
I think the majority of what you're saying is absolutely true.
Well, I think if you look at I kind of did a deep dive on this because it was so fascinating to me. If you like Paul Simon is a little bit of and listen, people are going to watch this and if they have strong feelings, I get it. And you may go, hey, what about this guy? And I think that's true. But I think in mass, you're not going to be able to disprove this point.
Exactly.
Now there's anomalies to everything. But Paul Simon to me is a great anomaly. But I think one of the reasons that he had that surge in his 40s and 50s was because he rewrote the book for himself.
Right.
He went, let me give you a what's the word? He went to South Africa, recorded this record.
That's
and
right.
so when he puts out Graceland, the tableau has completely changed. So you grab it, you put in like, oh, it's another great Paul Simon album. And your brain goes, because you're like, what are all of these noises, sounds? You're like, so your brain literally goes like, oh, we have to sort of start over.
Yeah.
I can't. And so I think that's what really smart artists do is they go, okay, I've done that. It's great. What if I do something like this? And I think you'll see, I think Coldplay's done a good job where they kind of go, it's time to sort of redo everything.
Yeah.
Because you're just used to, you're literally used to my voice. So Paul Simon said, okay, you may know my voice, but watch this. What if I change every instrument you're used to hearing me sing and write new kind of cool songs? You go, well, now that is different. That is very different. Because I was thinking Simon and Garfunkel or you and an acoustic guitar playing ballads.
Yeah.
This is African music, and then it's Central American or South American music with the next record. And I think that's where, to your point, you can really see interesting things happen when people are like, well, no, I feel, you can almost feel your brain go, oh, nope, stop, start over. Now let me hear it. And you're like, this is great. And so I think, again, it's not a hopeless thing. That's not what I'm saying, but I think it does help our community of people understand why these years
it makes
get so hard.
Much sense. I don't think I've ever thought about it in terms of your first, second, third, fourth album. And it's so true on just about every artist I've ever grown up listening to.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to be a naysayer because I think great artists, you know, I think is exciting about this. I think that's the fun work of the age I am is going, okay, we got to rethink some things. Not like,
no, right.
You know, it's going, no, okay. No, so if I'm a songwriter, which I think I am, I got new work to do.
Right.
Let's go. Let's scrape everything off the lab table. We got new things. We got what are the new chemicals we're working with? And to me, I did this Beatles inspired record a year and a half ago. That was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. I mean, it was a blast.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was like, I'd learned a million things. I probably never learned more about songwriting in the year and a half I listened to the band and learned their music. And then I wrote and produced this record by myself. It was one of my greatest joys of my life making that record. Did it have the response I wanted to?
Right.
No, it had an incredible response. My friends, the people I kind of wanted to love it, loved it, which made it really mattered to me. But we're fans like en masse going, no. But it's like, that's the season of life I'm in. And I'm still working through trying to have joy around that. But I just know what I feel like I was responsible for. I had so much fun doing it.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to make more music, but I think it does take a little bit for those of us who want to do it for a really long time. It's work. It's the best work, but it is work.
It's work.
And I think to me, I get so inspired by artists that I see go, okay, I'm in my 40s and I can't drift. I got to do some
I think
work.
it almost takes you back to why you love it in the first place.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, because I've just, even having a 20-year-old son who's very into beats and rap and learning how to songwrite, now in school, but really wants to be a rap artist. I'm so thankful for that music in the house.
Yeah.
Because it's actually shifted my rhythms.
Absolutely.
It's shifted certain things. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of this anymore. I'm not afraid of that rhythm. I'm not afraid.
But I think, so to your point, you asked a really great question earlier, and I think this is a good way to answer it, is like, when we think about what our calling is, right? Like, what are things we're built to do?
Yeah.
And I think, now this is kind of an occupational answer, but I think it still matters. So you and I know a million people that write really great songs and don't do it professionally. And that's great. And they bless their family with it, or their church. Yeah. And that is a gift, and it doesn't diminish their gift at all. But I think for those of us who, I think that's maybe where I could be defining this wrong, but I think where calling would be different than passion.
Yeah.
Because to me, calling got to push through a bunch of really hard things. And I think for people like, well, how do I know my calling? I'm like, well, maybe one way to think about it is that you'll do hard things to see it achieve. To see it come to fruition. And again, I'm not talking about success, but I'm talking about, will you keep writing songs that are hard to finish? Will you, do those things that you're like, will you in your 40s, okay, I got to rethink some things. Yeah. What are ways to reimagine my music in ways that maybe people will hear it differently? But like, to me, that's the joy of it. I actually love that. And so I think for me, when you think about how do we know what God is pulling us toward or what he's blessed us with, I'm like, well, some of it is going to be kind of, will you do the work that it requires? Yeah. Because that to me is like, well, then that may be your calling. Like a giftedness plus drive and fervor to push through hard things, to me is like, that's probably a pretty good marker for like something God maybe wants you to do, or that you may be built to do. Because I think, we all know those friends that started and kind of quickly read the room on like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, that's right. Because it's probably not what, it doesn't mean you're not good at it. You could be as good at it as I am, maybe even better, but it may just not be what you're meant to do. Yeah. And that's great. Yeah. So you can do that in its own context. It takes crazy amounts of, but to me, that's actually one of the things I like the most. I love that challenge. I love the work, the craft of going, okay, like that song didn't do as well. I wonder why. I wonder if, what if I did this? Or, man, I played the song for somebody the other day and they loved it. I didn't think they liked that song. What is that? Like that to me is the joy of the work, is then getting back in the lab and going like, okay, that didn't work. Let's get some new beakers.
Yeah, I would almost say that a true musician isn't somebody that's been successful at it. It's someone that actually really loves it and enjoys the creative process of it.
I mean, and to your point, it's one of the first things you said as we were talking is like, I just have a profound love of music.
Yeah.
I can't.
That's so obvious with you.
It's one of my favorite things. Yeah. And so to me, it's like, there's not a choice if it's not going to work or not. I'm always going to do it. I don't know to what level, but I'm like, I just love it. I love it.
Hey, I want to take some time to just, again, thank Amazing Kids Curriculum. I love Amazing Kids. Connie and Tyler Bates have created an incredible children's curriculum for churches. And what is so great about this is if you're planting a church and you are, maybe perhaps you're in a church that's maybe not a big church, but it's a small church that's growing, but you really need Bible-based, Holy Spirit-filled curriculum for your littles in your church. This curriculum is stunning. You can access this by going to amazing.kids and looking through their material and how to sign up for your type of church. Again, this is incredible curriculum. It is Bible theology-based, Holy Spirit-filled curriculum, and you will not be disappointed in what God does with this curriculum and how he uses it to bring life and the word to the kids in your church. So where do you go now? Like, where do you go from here? Are there things that you have to settle and quiet down? And then keep going.
You ask such great artist questions. I mean, only artists know to ask these kind of questions because we all feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the season I'm in now is like, my art. I mean, I'm just going to be really vulnerable and honest. I think I'm kind of reading the room a little bit on the artistry stuff is not resonating quite like it was. Now, I'm not taking that as it's done. I'm taking it as like, hey, maybe it's a season to breathe a little bit. I've put out a ton of music in the last 5 years. Like starting in COVID, I've put out a copious amount of music. Now, I can do that naturally. And if it were up to me, I would put out probably a song a month for the rest of my life. But I do think there's something in realizing like, people may need a break. I may need a break. Because, with music comes expectations or released music. Yep. And that gets really, it's just unhealthy for me because I get to like, you got hard at work. So I think there's some wisdom in kind of going like, okay, maybe for my artistry as far as creation, not playing necessarily, but the creation of it, maybe it needs a little break. And, so I've been doing a lot more writing, which I've really enjoyed.
Where you're just one of a few writers in a room.
Yeah, writing for other people. Yeah. Which I've really enjoyed. So I think some of it, Emerson Hart, my dear friend who's the lead singer of Tonic, told me this once, and I think it's such a profoundly wise thing to say. He said, Dave, and I sat with him a bajillion years ago, and I was like, tell me everything you know. And he's basically like, I look at my career like 4 fires. And there's Tonic, there's Emerson Hart, the artist, there's producer and songwriter. He's like, and I wonder if he'd say this now, but he said, and one tends to spark and I'll go foster it. And then as it sort of calms, another one tends to pop. And he's like, I've just always thought that's helped me so much over the years. It's not that all of them don't need to be ablaze. You couldn't do it.
Right.
So it's just going that's
like, actually great
what is going and having grace for the one that the fire that kind of chills for a second, not like it's over. I'll never light it again, but just going, it's just not a season for that right now. And so I think I'm trying to have discipline around that in my life where it's like, these things are going to kind of have their moments and kind of tend to them well in those seasons and be mobile and go where God sort of is lighting these things. And
what's always been your biggest fear?
Oh, irrelevance. I mean, just that it would be like, it doesn't matter anymore. Whatever I'm creating, people are like, yeah, it's just, who cares?
Wow.
But even that gets less daunting as the death of my ego, because I realize like if I'm still really loving it, like if I'm making a song at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm like, that's it. Who cares? Like that, what a joy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is something I've never experienced more in my life is like when I write something that I'm like, it is like, just stop, Dave, be in this moment, be with the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. I do this so much by myself because I write so much I only write for myself, by myself. I will end my studio. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for this song. Thank you for this feeling. Like, be here right now. Don't start, what should I, how should I, what's the cover? It's like, no, stop. This is potentially the end of this moment.
Yeah.
So just sit for a second, like listen to it again. And then just let it go. Like, all right, now we move on with just grace for knowing, like, I think God is really proud of me.
Yeah.
And I think I have achieved what he has asked me to do. He's not going, now, Dave, if it doesn't, this many streams, like, you're really ruining your gift. He's going, man, thank you. that's exactly what I called you to do. And so I think for me, it's just trying to be more present and going, man, if that's still happening, that's the best I got.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Yeah.
And not sort of like how songs resonate or what happens. And so I felt that maybe more in the last 3 years than I have maybe since the beginning of writing for me, because I just feel like now I'm writing stuff that I'm enjoying so much.
Right.
And I'm like, that's God, that the rest of it's not up to me. Like, that's all I got.
If your relevance is your greatest fear, what's your greatest hope?
Oh man, that's a dark question because there's some really misconstrued things in there. That Paul McCartney would be like, let's start the Beatles again, just me and you. That was probably more Ringo than anybody. But I don't know, I think I have to be careful because there's just a lot of ego that I'm still trying to get rid of. I think.
Is the ego been something that the industry created?
No, that's just
been you,
Mr. Sin, just like,
I love that you're so honest about it, because I think sometimes people are just taken out with it.
Yeah, well,
they recognize it, but they don't call it.
I think one of the things that is, I'm wide open here, so everybody be gentle with me. But I think one of the things, this is just my story, but because I think this was not something I thought I would ever do. This wasn't on my dream board, my vision board.
Yeah.
You don't have I thought I would be like a pastor in some church somewhere, like my dad did. But I think there's always been a narrative I've had to be careful of, which is like, I don't really deserve to be here.
Wow.
And it's not, and that sounds heavier than it is. It's much more manageable now.
Yeah.
And it never was over. It would have crushed it. Yeah. I wouldn't have done it if it was that heavy. It'd have been too much. But it's just this really still small voice in me that can get very like, these people know about this more than you do. Or, you kind of snuck in because other people grew up doing it. Or if you listen to how they sing, they don't miss notes. Mm-hmm. Or, every song this person puts out is just they're nailing it. And so I think for me, it can get, in a season where stuff slows down, boy, it can turn into a cocktail of really dark things that I start to hear in my head, which is like, see? And then you start going like, was it ever there? Was it a fluke? And God's like, what are you doing? But I think for me, that's the discipline these days is sort of, I think my hopes can get tricky because like, it's like all of a sudden there's like thunderclouds and it gets dark and I'm standing on a mountain like holding lightning bolts like, listen to this next song. And I'm like, oh, yes, sir, you're the best. Please do. And it sort of comes from this place of like, I think in my heart, I just want to know that what I've done is good and respected. Yeah. And that my peers see it and go like, man, that is really good. And it doesn't even mean that it needs to be successful necessarily. Yeah. It's just that it's respected by people I respect. That's always been one of my big things is that there's a sturdiness to it, like that each thing I create, you can kind of go, yeah, I mean, it's compact. This is great. Yeah. It will live, next. And I think if I'm not careful, it's like the accolades can really mess with me because it feels like some version of validation. And it's like, see, okay, no, you do deserve to be here.
Yeah, it's kind of a slippery slope.
Oh, it's the never-ending slope. It's literally the endless slope.
But I do think some of that is in all of us. But I do think what we're doing is perpetuating some of those feelings.
Oh, well, and success does. I mean, it's even read Paul McCartney interviews, and he's like, he still wants to be accepted. Yeah. And I'm like, you're the best songwriter probably of all time, most successful. Yeah. How? And it's like, that's because God's like, yeah, this is not going to make you happy. Yeah. Like, read your Bible. Right. It'll tell you this didn't do it. And I'm not saying he's alone. I feel it. Yeah. That's why I need the Lord and I need the Bible is to remind myself like, oh yeah, this is not success scales. Yeah. I'm never getting away from like, like that thing where I'm like, Lord, one playlist would just really, and he's like, how many? I'm like, did I say one? Let's do 3. Let's get it around 10. And then from there, just never. Yes. And so then it's about me making sure that I can find joy. That was something, man, the Lord, oh boy, I was on a run about a year ago and I was in it. I mean, I was in the middle of the hurricane of like, it's gone and everything's gone and everything. And I just remember the Lord, I had this very clear thought. And it was like, what would the devil need to do to take you out of the game? to get you out. And it was like he would steal my joy because that's one of the things I have more than anything else. And I was like, holy cow, he's doing it. And I was like, well, then I had to get my joy back. Like, how do I get joy? And it was just like such a profound moment for me because I was like, that's the work, you know? Like the joy of the Lord is my strength.
Yeah.
And it was just the work of going like, how do I find the joy? And that's my discipline now, is because that is one of my gifts. I love
it is.
And so for me, like I'm out of the game if that's gone. And that's an easy thing for Satan to do and the world to do, is just to go, let's just lead you down this path. And all of a sudden I'm worried and I'm fretful. And
how many times a week does Annie have to say, hey, snap out of it?
You know, we've been married so long, and I think I'm old enough now that I can manage it. And I mean in a good way, not like I'm sneaking drinks in the corner managing it, like little bumps in the bathroom. Kind of like, I'm good, babe, I'm good, babe, I'm good, babe. But like, you know, our relationship has really changed because I feel like it's not quite as heavy that way.
Because she's not a musician at all.
No. And she doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like she's like, you're great. This is awesome. You know, I mean, she's not over effusive, which is why I married her. Because if I had married that, I'd been like, I'm like, make me work for it, you know. But that's a great question. It's funny. Yeah, I don't know. Our marriage just changed that way. It's not quite as like me lamenting as much anymore. Right. It's you know, I'll tell her hard things, but I think God and I have really our relationship has gotten a lot more robust that way.
Wow.
Where I feel like I can go to him and go like, this is frustrating me. Why is this like, can't you make this happen? Or this is what I want. Why is it not happening? Right. But I think I used to take a lot of that to her. And now it's a lot more like, yeah, this is tough. Or, you know, every now and then I'm definitely like, this is driving me crazy or whatever. But I feel like it's a little more healthy that way. And I think that has a lot to do with just.
How has kids changed your drive?
It's tricky. I mean, what that guy said in that round, or that showcase, I do feel on such a deep level. In fact, I heard an interview with the guy, a songwriter, the other day. I was listening to a songwriting podcast, and he's like, I thought this was so well said. He's like, when I fight for points on a song or publishing on a song, he's like, this is money for my kids. Yeah. Like this isn't me money. And I was like, that's actually a really great, and maybe it's manipulative, but it's also true. It's like, true. I'm not sticking this money away this is to pay for my kids' lives. Yeah. In mine too. Yeah. But I think it does sort of like, you know, those things start to inform a lot of like, okay, well, we got to make money. Yeah. Like, I mean, we got to provide. But I think at the same time, it's just even more clarifying that God's like, oh, you do. Oh, so you're providing. Oh, good, Dave.
That's such a hard one, Dave. That is a hard one.
I mean, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the confusion that I think he must feel, but that it's the confusion on me that God's allowing me to do this, but if I'm not out there doing it, that's right. The check's not going to come.
That's right.
And that's a lesson you learn from the Lord. And that's a very difficult one.
It is.
You know,
it takes a lot. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I've had to, in this sort of barnacle scraping season, scraping season, I think God has just had to remind me that, again, I think success, it has a million little side quests it takes you on. And one of them for me was like, oh, I'm the author of my success, which is funny because I tell you, this guy gave me a story and God's like, oh, so you did all that. I'm like, well, I mean, I didn't do all of it, but I did write the song. Right. And he's like, oh, you know. Right. And so I think for me, God just had to remind me like, man, the illusion of control is just such a joke. Wow. It's such a joke. Yeah. Even the things you really think, no, I can kind of trace it back. God's like, still, you really think that? Like, brother, like, come on, man. Yeah. And so, but it is, I think as the things you know, like your kids especially, but whatever, it's like the more you amass, you know, you start looking at it and going like, I got to keep up with all this stuff, you know? And with kids especially, it's this feeling of like, man, how's this going to go? I mean, I think that.
And thinking those things as if God doesn't know that yet.
It's so stupid.
It is so stupid.
It's dumb. Like he got me this far and he's going to be like, well, I got to bounce.
See,
you feel like you kind of got it.
But it feels so real in the moment that's just how you feel. It just feels like, you know, I remember, you know, I started the year 10 weeks straight, like no days off. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 weeks straight. Jeez. And I just, you know, sure, you could pay your bills. And then you have time off. And I was like, I don't like being on the road anymore. Like there's a beautiful in it, but But the beautiful in it is when the leaving of the house, the packing of the bag, everything just feels like it's meant to be. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just feel like a dancing monkey half the time.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, I hate being on the road. I hate being on the road. Then you find yourself, you've got 6 weeks off and you're like, what am I going to do?
I know.
And the Lord's like, you hate being on the road.
Yeah.
And it's just, you almost have to pull yourself, be like, oh, you've given me time off.
Yeah.
And you know how we're going to make it.
Yeah.
And why am I spending? He's like, I don't know. Why are you whipping yourself into a frenzy?
Yeah.
And those are the hardest lessons to learn because it is all about control.
Oh yeah.
And it is so hard.
And the inability, I think one of the hardest things, that's been something I've had to learn a lot about that I've tried to encourage my friends around is like, especially that are like you and I, where it's like, you're kind of home for, or like, even if you're a professional songwriter, you're just kind of around and have slow days. And I'm like, listen, I think it is infinitely harder to be bored than it is to be busy. Too busy. I really do.
Full on.
Like too busy, you're on a river.
Yeah.
And it's taking you. Bored, you're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, I think some of the people I've had so much respect for are people that know how to navigate slow days, slow weeks, slow months.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like, that's magic.
Right. It is.
You tell me that dark secret because that's a whole different, like the pace of, slowing your pace of life to go, I've got kind of like a week and I'm not doing much. And, I think I'm going to read one of the mornings. I may go serve in this or help something. And I'm like, that to me is maturity, to be able to stare down, because that's death. It's the end of your, it's just sitting there. You're going like, I have no purpose, nothing to do. And, for me, boredom is terrifying.
Right.
That, like people that can navigate that, I'm like,
rest
something.
isn't a vacation. It's a state of being.
Absolutely.
And I'm
it's
like,
a
if
discipline.
I could just get into the discipline of rest and not thinking when I finally get to the Bahamas, then I'll take a rest. It's like, that's not ever going to happen.
No.
So,
somebody told me once, you'll never be tomorrow what you're not becoming today. Which just ruins so many paradigms. Because it's like you think and it's like, like start it today if that's the thing you want to be or whatever. And so I think that is something to me that's really God's been impressing on me. I had a season about a year ago where it was like, I just didn't have much for a couple of weeks. And I remember I was like, all right, I got to stare this down. And I would do this thing where I'd be like, I'm going to read for an hour in my studio. There's a book. And I would just force myself to and a lot of people, that's not their lives, but it was mine in that season. And just to go, okay, this is okay. I don't need to I'll listen to song ideas. I'll listen to music. It was like, Dave, just chill.
Yeah. Now, are you a little ADHD?
What do you think? Squirrel. I mean, I get real twitchy.
Oh, man.
My brain just moves too fast for me. It's just constantly sprinting here and there.
Yeah. How do you manage that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I think I think one of my struggles is that thing I just said. I think it's like really having to be, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry for me was a life-changing
that's a
book.
killer.
Because it was like, it spoke so much to my struggle set, which is like, how do I just slow my life down? And realizing it's kind of a gift, right? Like, I think that's something that's so humorous about those days for me is I'm like, I think a lot of us fight so hard to make money to get these things because that's actually where we're trying to get. Yeah. We're trying to get to where I can have 3 hours of sitting doing a walk, but yet we have those and we're like, and I feel like God's like, bro, so, okay. So I think that you're doing the thing you've tried to get to and now you don't want to do it. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting way to think about that. And so I think for me, there's a little bit of it's almost like, I don't know. It's like, just kind of practicing this thing of going, there's going to be a point in my life where I probably don't have a lot of stuff to do. It'd probably be good to get a little good at that now because I think people make terrible decisions in that season of life. Yeah. And I'm like, there's practice at kind of knowing how to be still and, and just kind of, that's okay. I think God's hugely a part of those moments, but I think it can be easy to feel like, no, God needs my productivity. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, let's see how that goes. Where it's like, maybe God just wants me to have a morning where I don't have anything to do. Which is a weird part of what we do. It's a really weird part of what we do. Yeah. Knowing how to sort of manage that time. Yeah. is like, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Really tricky.
The hustle it's real.
It is. It is.
And then when you don't hustle, you're trained to hustle. So you're hustling in your rest.
Or you see on Instagram how everybody else is hustling. And you're like, oh, shoot. What am I supposed to do with that? You know?
Hey, a little segue here to just remind those of you who really love what the podcast is carrying, love what I do. You know that I mentor, you know that I work with creative and artists. We are in some exciting things this year with my nonprofit, Wearing Justice, but I can't do a lot of these things unless I have help and donations. We are a charitable organization, a nonprofit, and it's Christian education based. And if you are out there and you love to donate to things that not just inspire people, but heal people while people are being inspired, would you consider donating to my nonprofit, Wearing Justice? If you just click this QR code that you're seeing on the screen, you can donate and give any amount of donation. It was greatly appreciated. I would so appreciate it because I can keep doing what I feel like God's called me to do and really keep believing in artists everywhere and how God is using the arts to heal people's heart. And I love that. I just love what I do. I want to keep this up, but I need your help to do it. So would you consider today making a donation to Wearing Justice and help keep this all up and running? All right, I got just a couple more questions for you. Is there something that I know we've talked about the dreaming thing, so this may be a stretch for you. Like something that you want to do, you want to accomplish, whether it's a person you want to write with or a song that you want to write or an award that you want to win. Like what would you love to still do?
That's a good question. You know, there's a few things. I think I really want to have a season of my life where I can be free creatively, where I think in co-writes, I think I do that pretty well with my own self because I've done it for so long. I feel like my own stuff I do pretty freely. But I would say especially, I just love to be free. I'd love to be creatively free. And I think,
what does that mean for you?
To just not worry about the aftermath of things, you know, to be where I am, to be, especially like in co-writes, just to be open to like God may have different plans for the song than I do.
Got it.
And that's great, you know,
and
not, I think, you know this, I think the industry part of what we do in a co-writing sense gets tricky because you kind of want to know, like, is this something somebody will record or do we feel like this is singable?
Yeah.
And that's good. And I think those matter. Or will it end up in
a Dropbox folder?
There you go. Yeah. Cut to my phone. It's just folders and folders.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's Dropbox hell.
That's a big goal of mine in this next season is just to be free, just to like really approach music in a very like grateful, open-handed way and a little less like.
So would you say that when you go into most of the songwrites you go into that there's an agenda hanging in the air?
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
People are lying too if they say there's not.
Wow.
That's a lie. I mean, very mature, unbelievably wise people I know can do that. And I do know people that can come in and be like, hey, let's just write what's in the room. But I think like there's never been less money to be made in music. And I think professional songwriters know that. And we're all like, hey, to make money, this stuff has got to be heard by a lot of people.
Right.
And so I think it's hard not to get in rooms and kind of feel this sense of like, okay, like, and especially if you got a good room, you're like, oh, everybody in here's got some heat. You know,
if you're looking on your phone and you're seeing who you're writing with on a Thursday, have you ever like started praying about that right before you get there and ask the Lord for melody lines?
God's helping,
yeah. How does that work for you? Do you usually get a melody line or a?
I think it just makes me go, yeah, God's got it. He's gone before me. I don't need to like. I just think it's so much ego. It's just like not trying to justify my space in the room or overdo or underdo. Or it's just like, hey, who am I in each moment? And that melody makes me want to sing this melody. Those lyrics made me think of this. Or like, I don't have anything. Just be quiet. They've got it.
Yeah.
They're doing great. You know, I like that. That's great, guys. Keep going. And it's like just a big old blank page.
Yeah.
That's okay. Like, that's okay.
Do you get apprehensive, nervous?
Oh my God, yeah.
When you go, you still do.
Mm-hmm.
based on the people in the room or just in rights in general?
No, just like hoping it'll go well. Or like an expectation where I'm like, we should crush this today. I love these people. Let's go. I had a write not long ago. And you know these rights where it's like, you come in and like the artist is like, people are like, hey, this is kind of what we're going for. And you're like, great. And you get in the room, the artist's like, hey, I want to do this. And you're like, okay, well, that's not really what we were told to do.
Right.
But that's awesome and we should do it. And then you do that. And it's hard not getting into the car being like, that was great, but that was not what they wanted us to do. And I know what they wanted us to do would have pretty much meant that song went and did this thing. But I'm honoring the artist and I trust God. And we had a great day. And we move. We don't sort of like,
Yeah.
So, in those moments, it can be kind of tricky too, of kind of like managing that stuff. So I don't know. I just feel like for me, I'm like, I'd love to get to a place where I'm just like present and we're writing the best thing we can for the day.
Right.
And then you go home and you trust God with the rest of it and it not be. So that's a big goal of mine. And I think too, someday I'd love to do more kind of organized mentoring of artists, which I kind of do anyway. And I've done for a long time.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you like mentor or pastor artists or
not in an official
them.
capacity, but a lot of that. I mean, that's one of my joys. That's a great joy.
Yeah. Do you see the benefits of throwing courage on other artists?
I leave like floating.
Yeah.
I'm like, it is one of my favorites. And I've done it that's been something I've done for a long time and I love to do. I do think as I get older, it's something I want to do in a more kind of official capacity.
Yeah.
So that's another dream. I mean, I have silly dreams. There's a dream. I want this. Oh man, and I've worked so hard for this, but all the doors just keep shutting. But that record that I brought to you, the Featherbrain Wealth Motel, the Beatles inspired record, I really want Paul McCartney to hear it. And I have worked every angle I have.
You should know somebody.
Oh, I do. And it's just the doors just kind of, I've had some incredible connects and it's just they haven't. That is a dream. I pray about that a lot. Like
really?
You'd be amazed how much I pray about that. It's just something I really want. And and it may, God may not want it and that's okay. But I'm like, Lord, you say, bring us your desires.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be the coolest thing in the world.
Well, that's great.
So there's things like that. I still have a lot of those kind of dreams, but, and I pray about them.
Yeah.
I really do. I take them on board. I'm like, hey, this is just, this would be cool. Doesn't mean it needs to happen, but man, it would make me so happy.
What about an award? Nah, you don't care about that stuff.
I do, but it's not going to help my life.
Have you won any?
No. I've come in second place a few times, but I don't know. I if God wants to give me that stuff in time, great.
Yeah.
And maybe as I get older, I could handle it a little better. Maybe it wouldn't mess with my brain so much, but that's not fair. I did win a Dove Award, which is so fun. But
did you win it for the?
No, it was a song I wrote for Jason Crabb with Jason Crabb, another buddy of mine.
Oh, interesting.
Which was so cool. What a cool moment. And I love the song, which is the best feeling. Like I love this song. We had so much fun writing it, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm just too old to kind of feel like, And I think, it's like you got to get old enough to realize like, okay, that's not just everybody loves the song. It's so much money and people and, positioning and labels and people throwing money around to make things work right. Which is fine. It's still a huge honor. Even nominated for a Grammy and flying out of LA was one of the coolest moments of my life. That felt like a huge win. Losing to Taylor. It's like, she's got so many great songs, but I was
Have you ever ridden with her?
No, but I know her.
Yeah.
She listened to my music growing up, which is really sweet. And actually did her second ever own show. She asked me to come open in Iowa, and I played for her.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was cool.
Wow.
But I'd like to. There's would I love to feel like Rolling Stone thinks my next record is like the record to listen to, or the scene hears it. That would be really fun.
What about writing a book?
I think I'll do that someday.
Yeah, because you'd be so great at writing a book about music and about bands and songs and choruses that you love and lyrics that just made you who you are. And because you were so great at that. I'm like, there's only a couple people in my life that are the kind of people that you could just say something in conversation, and I've got a friend who you'll say something in conversation and it's some lyric that he remembers from some song back in the 80s, and he'll just start singing the song. And it's just, you're kind of like that kind of guy. It's just your head for music. Yeah. Your knowledge of music is pretty insane.
I'll say this. I'm excited. I think as far as your question about hopes and dreams and next season life, I'm just really excited to see what God's got. I think I'm the least I've ever been entangled to things, which I'm thankful for. And I think I'm just kind of like really open-handed, which has taken immense amount of pain to get to, because for God to open your fingers is not an easy thing.
Yeah. Okay. So if God walked in your studio one day where you're sitting there alone and he sits down next to you and he is about to tell you what you've meant to him, what would he say? What would you say he'd say?
What God would say to me? Oh, geez. Oh man, what a question. I don't know. You know, what you said earlier really resonates with me. I would hope that he would say, it brings me great joy to see you do the things that I made you to do.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd go, oh, I know. Like, I feel that too. You know? Just, I don't know. I just think I really love the joy God gives me, and I feel an immense amount of pleasure in him when I can do that for people. You know? Be it music or stupid characters, whatever. It just gives me a lot of life. I mean, there's nothing I love more than making my kids laugh. You know, that
they
feeling.
They have to be laughing all the time.
Like, just that feeling of like, what a gift that is to have, you know. And so I think it'd be something in that world of just like, I think that's what God wants to say. I think that is what he says to all of us. It's like, he's made us in these really beautiful ways that when we really lean into him, which takes a lot of bravery. I think we underestimate how much it takes to be ourselves, you know? Yeah. But man, when we do, the freedom that we get and the joy that it causes in people is really profound. You know, it's like, how do we stay out of our own way to be that, you know, and believe what God tells us about ourselves and him. Mm-hmm. It takes tremendous work. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Would you say that joy is what you leave hanging in a room?
I think that's a great, I hope so. Yeah. I definitely hope so. I think it's
so good.
That's what I hope people experience, you know. It's just that some sense of God's joy, you know, and humor and whatever, joy from music or whatever, you know, just a sense of like life being lived, you know. Yeah.
It's so good. Thanks for coming.
Oh my gosh, thanks. Do we record? Is this a warm up?